Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul. In this video, we're breaking down Devil May Cry. The new season's just dropped on Netflix, and throughout this video we'll be going through it all. I also want to talk about the Easter eggs and all the little devil in the details. Obviously heavy spoilers ahead though, so if you haven't checked it out then please check out now. If you enjoy it, we'd appreciate the thumbs up and make sure you subscribe for videos like this every day. With that out of the way though, thank you for clicking this. Now let's get into Devil May Cry. Okay, so Devil May Cry pulls from a number of influences in the franchise. Though Devil May Cry is the main place it grabs the plot points, there's also various properties beyond that. This includes the DMC3 prequel manga and also the DMC1 novel. Episode 1 features cameos from that, including the character Gru. It also has Lucia from DMC2 along with a diner that you might recognize. That comes from the previous DMC anime, which feels like a great little Easter egg. Overall, it's an amalgamation of work that feels like they really got into some of the obscure stuff. For example, the White Rabbit's from the DMC3 manga, but its henchmen come from across all the games. We have Plasma from DMC1, Agni and Rudra from DMC3, Echidna from DMC4, and Cavalier from DMC5. Cavalier, messed that up, moving on. You might also notice that Abyss was also named in Dante's mugshot and file. We even have a reference to Resident Evil when Dante name drops Raccoon City as the place he took a terrible job. In case you don't know, Devil May Cry 1, that originally started off as Resident Evil 4. That went through a number of different development cycles, including a more horror themed version. We also had this action heavy version too. However, the developers felt it strayed too far away from the survival horror of the previous games. It was then redesigned to have demons, and thus Devil May Cry was born. This also led Leon to being transformed into Dante. Yeah, that's why they look similar, and this is a cheeky nod to his appearance in Resident Evil 2. Some of the DNA of the original design, that still lives on in Resi 4, as it had huge castles and a shift to action type gameplay. But enough about Resi, let's keep on rolling, baby.
Alright, partner. Keep on rolling, baby.
So we open the series with the White Rabbit as he heads to the Vatican and steals the Force Edge. This is the depowered sword of Sparta. White Rabbit's motivations, they involve opening up the demon world, bringing it across to the human world, and they basically, that's what the guy's entire plan is, which we'll talk more in depth on in just a bit. In the past though, Dante and Virgil's father Sparta was the greatest swordsman of the demon world. He was also the right-hand man to the lord of his world, Mundus. Mundus wanted to control the human world, but Sparta was having none of it. So he stopped Mundus from carrying out his plan. He used his sword, the Sword of Sparta, to seal the human and demon world, and this was alongside a priestess and amulet. Interestingly, Mary was a descendant of that priestess, and in the games, her father used her for his own gain, but more on that later. Dante and Virgil were both the children of Sparta, who he had with a human woman. Their blood and amulets combined are the secret to undoing the barrier when they're used with the sword, and a little hint of this is seen in the blue and red colouring. Throughout the season, we see the White Rabbit try and get Dante's blood and the amulet so that he can lift the barrier that Sparta created. Now, as we learned, the White Rabbit was a human that was sent to an orphanage as a very young child. He had a terrible time though, and eventually found a portal to the demon world. Inspired by the stories of Alice in Wonderland, he found a demon family. He lived a good life for a bit, until it became clear it's a harsh life in the demon world. This is a clear nod / retool to the DMC3 manga, as that saw the White Rabbit and Alice used as inspirations for the characters. He's even referred to as a child toy that became possessed and sentient in the show, which is what the White Rabbit was in the manga. Eventually he helped the demons escape and they lived in an apartment block. Similar to the one in episode 4, where we get what I think is a nod to 2012's criminally underrated Dread, which was also produced by Shankar. Upon arriving though, he was met by Mary and Darkholme, who wiped out the demons despite his pleas that they were peaceful. Thus he spent his life hell-bent on a plan to bring hell to Earth. Now it all culminates with him basically turning into a hulking beast, sorta like Bane but with blood instead of venom. While hell is brought to the human world, Mary shoots him right into his blood device and Dante is able to defeat him using his devil trigger. He then takes the amulet off the Sword of Sparta, which is now in its original form, and finally the day is saved. Yay! Well, for the humans at least. You might also notice that Dante calls Mary Lady. This is what he called her in DMC3, and we almost get the pair having a demon hunting alliance like what they did at the end of that game. While she did start to realize demons aren't all bad. She ends up sedating Dante and then takes him in. Visually, she starts to see their true form, and not the usual depiction, which reminded me a lot of Black Mirror. He's then put in stasis like some sort of Winter Soldier, as his blood and his sword are far too dangerous to be kept out in the open. Now, all this was correctly predicted in the rabbit's death speech, as he said he'd become unlovable. Dante, like the rabbit, lived in two worlds, and he was the perfect villain to put against the character. Rabbit found a family in the demon world, and he grew up to resent the human one. On the other side of this, Dante's half human, half demon, and he wants to protect the human world, much like his father. We then see the Vice President declare war on the demon world, voiced by the late great Kevin Conroy. Thank God, the last time I heard his voice was in this, and not the Suicide Squad Killer Justice League game. Now, he had the portal device that the rabbit had, and wanted to keep it out of human hands. Using it, he launches shocking awe on the demons. Bringing in jets, he bombs the heck out of Heck, while Green Day's American Idiot plays in the background. The song itself was a protest song against George W. Bush's America, the war on terror, and the US news channels being used as propaganda. VP Baines himself is essentially Dick Cheney, who was the one pulling the strings behind Bush. We even get a cowboy Texan president in the show, which hammers home this is DMC's war on terror. So that's all laced throughout the subtext, and the Second Iraq War, that's been something that's massively controversial due to several things around it at the time. The public were told there were weapons of mass destruction, but in reality it's thought we were just after oil. The inconvenient truth is that not all demons are bad, but humans believe they are, so they need to be wiped out. I mean, the demon world, it's supposed to be hell, so don't think it's going to be that difficult to sell. The president then announces their strikes, which reminds me of Bush addressing the US after they attacked Iraq. Just like Iraq, airstrikes were sent in first, with shock and awe taking place. The first game did release in the West just after September 11th, and the franchise ran concurrently with the War on Terror. So it makes sense that they tie these two properties together. We then see soldiers raising the Stars and Stripes, which is similar to the raising of the flag on Iwo Jima. Tanks roll in, and demons are taken prisoner, and I wonder if Dante will side with them in the future. Humvees also have trophies of kills, and it did remind me a bit of Starship Troopers. The movie, not the book. Now, the president speaks to the nation as we see humans mining in the demon world. It's overlooked by the VP and run by the Ouroboros Corporation. This is Arius, who was the main antagonist of Devil May Cry. In that game, he used his corporation to gain power and wanted to free a demon called Argosax. He secretly wanted Argosax's power to rule over Earth, and he mined a place called the Vida Mali to receive the Arcania. Here in the show, the invasion's been used for him to mine, and probably find some secret items. As we see though, demons are kept prisoner, but they're eventually released. At the start of episode 7, we saw a mysterious figure give Virgil's amulet and blood to the rabbit. This figure appears again to kill the Ouroboros gods. He does the classic anime unsheath and insta-kill, and he's revealed as Virgil. It's something that's most notably done in DMC 5, which is a bit of a clue to the reveal moments later. He then recruits the demons and says, "Our King Mundus grants you your freedom." It's clear he's working with Mundus with this, and is why he gave Rabbit the items to weaken the wall between the two worlds. Now, the show kind of blends the plot points of DMC 1, 3, and the manga, with the timeline being a bit different. DMC 3 is canonically the first game in the series. Here Dante sent an invitation by his brother Virgil, which is delivered by Arkham, who turns out to be Lady's father. Those two have teamed up to basically do exactly what the White Rabbit wanted to do in the show, and merge the two worlds. Dante then meets Mary here as she wants revenge on her father for killing her mother. We saw in the show how her father was obsessed with demons and wanted to learn more about them. Ruined his life, and he then experimented, which turned him into a demon that then killed her mother. That was foreshadowed early on in episode 6 as the family saw a similar movie. It did remind me somewhat of Batman though. Bruce Wayne most notably saw Zorro at the theatre before his parents were killed, and thus he ended up becoming Batman. It's like how I saw something really heavy fall onto the back of a car spoiler and then became Man Named Heavy Spoiler. Here Mary saw a movie with her parents though, and she was then also attacked. I did like how Mary's heterochromia from the games was also shown in her mother as well. Basically, in layman's terms, that's when your eyes are different colours. It's a very groovy mutation. It fits the theme of the story so well though, as red and blue are used heavily to show the difference between two worlds and even the brothers. So though it's not red and blue, you know, it's a nice way to show different sides of things. Mary, of course, ends up growing a kinship to Dante. Her dad becomes a demon, so there is the nice duality in the character. Either way, the idea of two colours appear in Dante and Virgil, as they used to dress in red and blue. We also hear Afterlife by Evanescence, which is a brand new song for the show that brings me to life. The soundtrack is very appropriate for the time though, as we hear Rolling by Limp Bizkit, Last Resort by Papa Roach, and Butterfly by Crazy Town. We even get Dante's jukebox at his rundown home that ends up playing Rage Against the Machine. The jukebox comes directly from the game, as it was in his shop during Devil May Cry. So it just really adds to that 2000 aesthetic. Either way, something else I want to focus on is the episode where we see Rabbit and Mary's childhoods, which was heavily reminiscent of Harry Potter the Deathly Hallows. The animation's allowed to flourish, and it's just like the silent episode of Invincible. That had zero dialogue as well, and we got to see Tether Tyrant and Magnamaniac's life. In both instances, including here, it's beautiful, creative, and it just takes you on a journey that's filled with peril. I think you could even watch this as a standalone episode without any prior knowledge and get blown away by just how good it is. Now, speaking of Invincible, we've just launched our Cyber Donald inspired shirts. These are a play on the Terminator and feature everyone's favourite GDA agent. You might have also seen we're doing these Daredevil shirts. I've got a double-sided design. Can you see it on the... Can you see it on the back as well? It's double-sided. That's the case with the Donald's shirt as well, and if you want to pick one of them up, that's at our merch store right below the video. You look fantastic. Now in the game, Mary wants to kill her father, and she and Dante form an alliance. It's revealed that Arkham doesn't have BDE after all, big demon energy, and Virgil and Dante end up fighting him together. Virgil sought power all this time. In the lore, he survived the attack as his demon blood awoke, similar to how Dante's does in the show. At the end of DMC3, Virgil descends into the demon world after Arkham's defeated and has a duel with his brother. He aims to defeat Mundus just like his father did, and this will be through using the sword Yamato. However, he gets his ass kicked and then gets imprisoned. He's tortured and then turned into Nilo Angelo. In DMC1, he's then used by Mundus to reach his goal of taking over the human world once again. Luckily though, Dante saves the day. The TV version of Dante, he simply thinks his brother's been killed though, since the events of DMC3 don't appear to have happened. So sometime between the attack on their mother, Virgil's joined with Mundus either willingly or not. He then says I am the storm, which is a reference to DMC, and his battle theme Bury the Light plays in the background. Seriously, it's metal as fuck if you haven't heard the full version. With all this in mind though, it does seem like Mundus has been manipulating the entire events of the show to get the rabbit to do his work for him. With that plan ruined, he's aiming to lead an army against the humans once more. So that takes us into our Season 2 theories, theory time, the kids love that, and the show ends on a cliffhanger. That has Virgil doing the bidding of Mundus, and he's basically going to lead an insurgency against the humans. Therefore, I think it's safe to assume that Season 2 will likely see this holy war. VP Baines is one of this the entire time, and as we know, the war on terror didn't exactly go very well. It saw a flurry of insurgents going to fight against a coalition of the willing, and in the show I think a similar thing's gonna happen. With humanity probably wanting to use demons in the war against hell, I feel like Dante could be woken up to fight against his brother. Considering that lady knows about Virgil now, she could get him to fight back against the demons. I did expect VP Baines to be revealed as a demon, but with him in league with Arius. However, we could see Arius and Argo Sax being involved in the ending as well. The show seems to be a bit more grounded than the games themselves though, and it reminds me a lot of DMC Devil May Cry. The sort of Fox News CNN parodies as well, that also reminded me of Bob Barbas. Bob Barbas, is that, I don't know, anyway, moving on. That game though, that used energy drinks to control humanity, and it had demons running the news. That said, it isn't very well liked amongst fans, so I don't know if they're going to go that route. One major thing that's up in the air though is of course Mary's father. As we mentioned, he was integral to the plot of DMC3, but we last saw him in a fire when she was younger. We learned in the game that his experiments indeed worked and he ended up getting powers. So he may have survived and could pop up in Season 2. Especially considering that canonically, she's a descendant of the priestess Sparta used to help seal the worlds. So it does make sense. Now what adaptation would be complete without a lot of Easter eggs? Luckily, there's some really cool ones for fans here. Early on in episode 1, we hear Dante shout out jackpot after a charged shot. It's pretty much a trademark saying of his.
Jackpot.
On top of weapons, we also see Lady use Kalina Ann. This is her signature weapon from the game. It was teased in episode 3, and poor Enzo tried to use it on the rabbit. Enzo himself was in the DMC3 manga, and he was someone who brought Dante jobs. He brought him the Alice rescue job in the manga, just like how Enzo brought him the job for the rabbit here. While Raccoon City was mentioned, we also get other nods to Capcom games, such as Mega Man, with there being a bobblehead in the Darkham truck. In episode 2, we also get a reference to Street Fighter with an arcade cabinet. While Castlevania was made by Konami, we get our boy Dante dancing on Dance Dance Revolution, which was also made by the company. I did wonder if this was a reference to Dante dancing like the king of pop in DMC5. Speaking of DMC5, game fans may recognise that Dante's voiced by Johnny Young Bosch. He actually voiced Nero, the son of Virgil in DMC4 and 5. Other ones which may be a reach are a Solid Snake lookalike who was part of the Demon Hunters signed up by Darkham. We also have one of the Darkham Special Forces who looks like Nightwing. In episode 2 we saw the crew using night vision, which really reminded me of Sam Fisher in Splinter Cell. Mary also at first looked like she had a similar HUD to the Assassins in Assassin's Creed. While the other ones might be a reach, this one might not be, and that's because Adi Shankar created the Ubisoft-inspired show called Captain Laserhawk. In episode 1, we also saw a sign that says Joe S, which might be a callback to Beautiful Joe, which is a Capcom classic that lets you play as Dante. S is also the name of rank in the Capcom games too. Beyond this, we also get some pretty neat nods to movies of the time, as the highway chase in episode 3, that reminded me a lot of the one from Matrix Reloaded, which we have a breakdown on the channel now. In episode 3, Patriot also says that the gun magnet microchips are something Goldstein whipped up in the lab. This could either be Neil Goldstein who makes Dante's guns, or Nico Goldstein from DMC5. On top of this, in the game, Lady's blood is also required to open the seal. This is a change in the show because she's a descendant of the priestess. Thus, the part that the Sparta sword plays is kind of reversed. In the games, they have to use the amulets and blood to open the seal, and we then get the swords from the demon realm. We also get a reference to the best Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man 2. No, don't at me. In episode 1, we see Dante dodging and saving people from a tanker. This is almost identical to the scene where Peter Parker saves Mary Jane from Doc Ock. But that's all our coverage of Netflix's Devil May Cry. Let us know what you think down below in the comments. Please drop a like on the video as well, and make sure you subscribe. Did you know as well that members of the channel, you also get early access to videos? If you click the join button, you get at least one breakdown a week before anyone else. Costs just 99 cents a month, and we try to set it where hopefully it's not a lot to you, but if a lot of you do it, it will mean a lot to us. So thank you to everyone who's done that, and if you want something else to watch, we've got a video on screen right now. That's our breakdown of the Invincible finale, definitely worth watching, and yeah, huge thank you to everyone who's already checked that out as well. If you don't want to watch it, well, sod ya, and with that out of the way, huge thank you for watching this video. I've been your host Paul, I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.